I will tell you today an unforgettable story, one about an old man who found a young woman unconscious near a mountain stream. He carried her to his cabin and cared for her. But as the days passed, and as his heart began to grow attached to her, strange things started to happen. Who was this woman, and why did she bear a tattoo on her wrist that no one could understand? Was she a victim, or something else entirely? Why did the mountain neighbors begin whispering about strange sounds heard at night from the old man's cabin? Stay with me until the end, for this tale hides dark secrets you could never imagine, and a lesson you will never forget. In one of the quiet mountain villages of northern Morocco, where sunlight slipped between olive trees, lived an old man named Hajj Imran. He was 60 years old and had inherited a simple mountain cabin from his father, overlooking a small stream flowing from the heart of the mountain.
Hajj Imran was a kind man, known among the villagers for his wisdom and generosity. Yet he was lonely, ever since his wife Fatima had passed away 15 years earlier. He had no children, and solitude gnawed at his heart quietly every evening. One spring morning, as usual, he went out at dawn to check the stream. He carried his wooden bucket and small jug, enjoying the sound of birds and the murmur of water. But then something unusual caught his eye near the trunk of a leaning willow tree. He approached cautiously, his weary eyes struggling to make out the details. There, on the ground, lay a young woman, trembling, her clothes torn, her face covered in dust, and her black hair damp with water. He knelt beside her, overwhelmed with shock, and placed his hand on her forehead. Her temperature was high. In the name of God, who is this poor soul? She did not move, only breathing faintly, a weak moan escaping her chest. He looked around, no one. Perhaps she had suffered an accident or fled from danger. He did not think long. He removed his cloak and covered her, then carried her in his arms with surprising difficulty, as if she weighed more than her body should.
He walked the narrow, rocky path toward his cabin, his heart beating faster than it had in years. He realized then that this day would not pass like any other, and that this mysterious woman might be the beginning of something he had never expected. When he reached his cabin, he laid her on a simple bed, brought her warm water and a piece of dry bread. After a while, she sat up slightly, her eyes half open, and whispered weakly, "My name is Lila." Then she fell unconscious again. Hajj Imran stood watching her, his face filled with worry. She was a young woman in her early 20s, and on her left wrist was a strange tattoo unlike anything he had ever seen. He did not know that Lila would not be just a temporary guest, but a storm that would sweep away all the peace left in his life. 3 nights passed since Hajj Imran had brought the strange girl to his cabin. She awoke only for brief moments, speaking slowly before slipping back into unconsciousness. He prepared hot herbal soup for her, covered her carefully, and sat by her bed through the night, reciting verses from the Quran and praying for her recovery.
He did not know who she was, but something in her features stirred old memories within him, like the shadow of a woman he had once loved, or perhaps a final chance to fill the emptiness of a heart that had remained silent and lonely for so many years. On the 4th night, Lila awoke fully. She opened her eyes slowly, then suddenly sat up, fear clearly etched across her face. He spoke to her gently, placing his hand on his chest. "Calm down. You are safe, my daughter. I am Hajj Imran, and this is my cabin. I found you unconscious near the stream." She looked at him for a long moment, then took a deep breath and asked in a trembling voice, "Did the police follow me? Has anyone asked about me?" Haj Imran froze for a moment. Police? Why was she running? But he steadied himself and replied, "No one has asked about you. I told no one. I did not think you were a criminal. I thought you were wronged." A tear slipped from her eye as she whispered, "I am not a criminal. I swear to you, but they were going to make me one."
His heart listened to her words more than his ears did. He did not press her further. Instead, he offered her water and asked if she was hungry. She nodded faintly. He gave her a piece of bread with butter, and she sat quietly eating. In the days that followed, Layla began to regain her strength. She cleaned the cabin, prepared meals, and washed clothes on the rocks by the stream. Each day, she left a different mark on Haj Imran's heart. The sound of her laughter as she chased a runaway chicken, the way she arranged bread on the table, and even her silence carried a special weight. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace speaking of childhood stories, he asked her softly, "Tell me honestly, who are you, Layla?" She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I escaped from a cruel household. They forced me to work for a wealthy man who showed no mercy. He tried to harm me, so I fled." She lifted her sleeve and revealed an old bruise on her arm. Haj Imran felt both anger and pity. "No one will hurt you here. This house is your house, and I am in the place of your father." Layla smiled, but something in her gaze was unsettling. There was always a shadow in her eyes, as if she was not telling the whole truth.
One day, while she was folding blankets, Haj Imran noticed a tattoo on her wrist. Its symbols were unfamiliar, circular with twisted lines like maps. He asked her about it. She answered with a faint smile. "It's from the past. It means nothing now." But he felt the matter was deeper than a mere tattoo. That night, he heard a faint sound from her room, like crying or perhaps speaking to herself. He approached quietly and pressed his ear to the door. She was whispering, "Soon, soon we will finish everything." He froze in place. Who was she speaking to? He opened the door slowly, but she had already fallen asleep, her face covered with a shawl. Doubt began to creep into his heart, though he resisted it. He did not want to believe that the one he had saved might be the cause of his ruin. Weeks passed, and Layla became part of Haj Imran's life. She planted herbs beside him.
She milked the old goat and prepared warm meals for him on cold nights. The days passed quietly, as though the wind had forgotten how to blow. Yet something was hiding behind those wide black eyes, behind her drowsy laughter, and within her long silences when she gazed at the mountain without uttering a word. One day, Haj Imran returned from the small market at the foot of the mountain carrying some supplies. He found Layla sitting in the backyard, staring at the sky and whispering incomprehensible words. He approached her with a smile and joked, "Are you speaking to the clouds?" She turned to him quickly, startled by his presence, then said, "Sometimes I speak with those who cannot be seen." Haj Imran laughed, thinking she was joking. But when he looked closely at her face, he realized she was not laughing at all. That night, while checking some old belongings in the storage room, he discovered something strange. A piece of black cloth carefully folded. Inside it, torn papers written in a language he could not understand, and one single message in Arabic, written in elegant feminine handwriting: "Whoever awakens the sleeper does not escape his curse."
His body trembled. He did not dare ask her about it.
He returned everything to its place, but he did not sleep that night. As days passed, Lila's behavior grew stranger. She locked her room for long hours, refusing him entry under the pretext of needing rest. One night, Haj Imran awoke to the sound of footsteps in the kitchen. It was 3 in the morning. He rose slowly and crept toward the source of the noise. He saw Lila standing before the mirror, holding a small knife and whispering broken words. "The time is near. It is near." He nearly fainted from fear. He returned to his room, unable to believe what he had seen. The next day, he did not confront her. He only watched from afar. She behaved as though nothing had happened, cooking meals and singing softly. While he sat in the cabin's courtyard, one of the mountain shepherds approached him, a man in his 50s named Si Mustafa. With curiosity, he asked, "Who is this girl living with you?" Imran replied, "Her name is Lila. I found her near the stream, sick and alone." Mustafa gazed into the distance and said, "People have begun to talk. They say you no longer go to the mosque, and that strange sounds are heard from your cabin at night."
Imran swallowed hard, then answered calmly, "I am only caring for a poor girl with no family." Mustafa looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Be careful, Imran. The mountain does not forgive those who awaken its ancient spirits." Hajjaj returned to the cabin carrying a storm of worry in his heart. Was Lila merely a lost girl or something else sent to test him? Days passed, and his eyes followed her every move. One night, as he walked past her room, he saw a faint light seeping from beneath the door. He approached, and this time heard a clear voice. It was not Lila's, it was a man's voice. Yet no one had entered the cabin, no one had climbed from the village, and there was no trace of anyone. He opened the door suddenly, but found only Lila sitting on the floor, clutching the small knife and trembling. She lifted her eyes to him and smiled a cold smile. Sometimes those who have departed return, and they sit with us for a while. He closed the door quietly, stepped outside into the courtyard, sat on the old wooden bench, and raised his hands to the sky, whispering hoarsely, "O Lord, if I have opened a door that cannot be closed, then close it with your mercy." From then on, Hajjaj Imran could no longer sleep well. He no longer heard the call to dawn prayer, nor tasted the sweetness of the hot bread Lila baked at night. Everything had become flavored with mystery, shadowed by fear. Yet he could not drive her away. He did not want to believe that the goodness he thought he had found might be a curse sent to mark his final days. More days passed, and Haj Imran began to feel that Lila's presence had become like air itself. He could not imagine the cabin without her, nor waking without hearing her soft voice preparing coffee, nor seeing her shadow pass before the wooden door as he watched the sunset. Despite his doubts, he could not free himself from his attachment to her. Everything in him, his heart, his longing, his loneliness, even his dignity, had surrendered to her. She smiled at him like a child, cared for him like a wife, spoke to him like a friend, and wrapped him in a warmth he had not tasted since the death of his beloved Fatima. One evening they sat together in the small courtyard under the dim light of the moon. Lila reached out her hand toward him and said with a warm smile, "Haj Imran, I no longer feel that you are only my rescuer. You are the safety I never found before." His heart trembled at her words, as though he had become a young man of 30 again. With a voice choked by emotion, he said softly, "I am an old man, and all I own is this cabin
and this small piece of land. But if you wish to stay, you will stay forever." Lila smiled and drew closer, whispering, "I am not searching for wealth, but for a chest on which I can rest my head." From that night, their relationship changed. She was no longer just a guest or a stranger. She became everything.
She began calling him by his name without the title Hajj, and he smiled at that like a child, hearing his name for the first time. One night, she said, "If there were a proper marriage contract between us, it would be a protection for both you and me." He did not think long. The next day, he went to the village sheikh, brought 2 witnesses, and wrote a simple marriage contract. No celebration, no invitations, only a few dates, some water, and the words, "I marry you to myself." Layla became his wife. She filled the cabin with life, decorating the walls with embroidery, hanging old mirrors and filling the evenings with soft music. Imran began wearing a clean cloak every day, shaving his beard and going to the market with a proud smile. But in secret, there were eyes watching. The eyes of the villagers, whispering, "How can a man in his 70s marry a girl in her 20s? Where did this stranger come from? Have you noticed that Hajj no longer goes to the mosque?" One morning, a neighbor named Abdel Karim came to him and said, "Be careful, Imran. Some people believe this girl is using sorcery to capture your heart." Imran laughed. People fear everything they do not understand. But inside, he had begun to feel something strange. He noticed that every week Layla asked him for a document or for his signature on papers concerning land, sales, or his bank account. He trusted her, so he did not read. He simply signed.
One day she told him, "You are a good man, and I don't want anyone to covet what you have. Let me arrange everything in our names." His heart, lost and wandering in love, did not question her. One night, while telling him a story about her dream of a wide house with a garden where children ran freely, she suddenly asked, "Do you long to have a son?" His eyes filled with tears as he answered, "More than anything, I only wish to leave behind someone who carries my name." She smiled and said, "Perhaps that will happen soon. Who knows?" That night he laid his head on the pillow, dreaming of his name written on the birth certificate of a child not yet born. But in the corner of the kitchen, Layla kept a small box hidden. Inside were things he knew nothing about, letters written in a strange script, an old phone, and a photograph of a young, handsome man in formal attire. Imran did not know that this man would soon appear and break his back. At the end of the week, Hajj Imran went to the market and returned 3 hours later. But when he arrived, he found the cabin door open, his papers scattered, and his small chest broken. He called out for Layla, but no one answered. Panic-stricken, he searched the rooms. Layla was gone, and with her, all the documents, even his bank book.
As he collapsed to the floor, he noticed something on the table. A single sheet of paper, written in her hand. "Thank you. You were kinder than you should have been." Imran sat on the cabin floor, his head bowed, tears soaking his old cloak. It was not the first time his heart had broken, but this was the most brutal collapse of all. Layla, the girl who had brought him back to life, had vanished, stealing everything. The documents, the papers he had signed with love and carelessness, even his bank book. She had taken with her his fingerprint
and his simple dreams. He opened the drawer where he kept the last photograph of his wife Fatima, only to find it torn in half. The box that held his old ring was gone. He picked up the note she had left and read it again. "Thank you. You were kinder than you should have been." Few words, but they pierced him like a dagger. He walked out into the courtyard, sat on the old wooden bench where they had sat together every evening, and lifted his eyes to the sky.
The clouds were heavy, and the wind howled through the mountain, as though nature itself was weeping with him. The next day, he did not leave the cabin, did not open the door, did not answer anyone. The villagers noticed his absence. Some thought he was ill. Others said, "Didn't we warn you?" But one man, Si Mustafa, felt something deeper was happening. He knocked on the door repeatedly, then entered without permission. He found Haj Imran sitting in the corner, pale-faced, staring into emptiness, the cabin littered with scattered papers. Mustafa asked, "Imran, what happened? Where is she?" Imran replied in a hoarse voice, "She was a curse, not a woman." Mustafa looked at him for a long time, then sat beside him and asked, "Did she rob you?" Imran nodded. A heavy tear fell to the ground. Then he said, "Layla was not alone. There was a plan, and another man." In the following days, the truth began to surface. Imran went to the town center and reviewed the papers he had signed. To his shock, all his lands had been transferred to a woman named Laila Ahmed Al-Alawi with his own signatures and fingerprints.
When he tried to contest the validity of the documents, they told him they were perfectly legal and that he himself had appeared and signed before a local notary. He could not believe it until he saw his own photograph attached to the file, smiling beside Lila in a rented office, signing with his own hand. She had taken him there weeks earlier, telling him they were arranging papers for the future. Imran laughed bitterly as he looked at the photo. Even my picture was a trap. But the story did not end there. On the fourth night, he returned to his weary cabin and found a small note pinned to the door, written in handwriting he knew well. "You will know everything if you go to the big house behind the forest at sunset." He hesitated, then decided to go. He reached the abandoned house he knew well. It was called Dar al-Tahuna, a forgotten place at the edge of the village. He entered with heavy steps, his heart pounding like war drums. Slowly he climbed the wooden stairs and opened the door that stood ajar. There she was, Lila, dressed in black, sitting beside a tall, handsome young man who bore the same strange tattoo on his left hand. She said coldly, "I did not expect you to come, but I respected you, and that is why I wrote to you." Imran's voice broke with anger and pain. "Why? Why did you deceive me?" She laughed and said, "Because you were easy, because you were alone, dreaming that someone might love you."
"But don't worry, I will not forget that you were kind." The man beside her spoke. "My name is Idel, and I am her true husband." He stepped forward and added, "We planned this from the beginning. You were only the means." Imran's heart nearly stopped. He could not bear it. The world spun around him. The ground seemed to lose its weight. In a faint whisper, he said, "You stole everything, but why?" Layla's eyes gleamed as she answered, "We needed money to start a new life, and you were the gateway." Before leaving, Idel turned to him and said, "Do not try to reclaim anything. Everything is legal. You yourself gave us the key." Imran walked out slowly, collapsing to his knees under the rain. In the nights that followed, the cabin of Haj Imran became abandoned. No one saw him, no one heard his voice. He sat in the darkness, eating nothing, drinking nothing, whispering only, "O Lord, I sought warmth, and I was burned." A week later, a shepherd found him in the courtyard, motionless, his face wet with rain, his hand clutching a paper on which was written a prayer. "O Allah, do not let those who do not fear you have power over us."
He did not die, but he was never the same again. As for Lila and Adil, 3 months later, the local newspapers reported a strange story. A horrific car accident claimed the lives of a young couple on the highway near Marrakesh. The car was completely burned, and the strange tattoo was identified on the woman's body. Haj Imran did not weep. He only looked up to the sky and said quietly, "O Lord, you are the most just of judges." The cabin returned to emptiness, just as it had begun. Yet anyone who passed by felt a chill in their chest, as though the spirits that had once dwelled there still guarded it in silence. Weeks passed in which Haj Imran did not leave his cabin. He was not seen in the market, nor on the mosque's threshold. Villagers walking past his cabin on their way to the mountain would pause, glance at the shuttered windows, and whisper, "He has lost everything." But they did not know that what he had lost was not money nor land, but trust and dignity. One morning, at sunrise, Haj Imran opened the cabin door for the first time since Lila's disappearance. He walked slowly to the wooden bench in the courtyard, pulled from his pocket an old notebook where he had recorded memories with his wife Fatima, and began to read softly. "We dreamed of a small orchard and a child running among the trees. Today the land belongs to others, and the house is silent like a grave." He sighed deeply, closed his eyes, and whispered, "O Lord, I do not regret kindness, but I am saddened that the kind-hearted have become easy targets." That evening, he heard a knock at the door. He opened it to find Sidi Mustafa holding a warm loaf of bread. They sat in silence until Mustafa said, "We learned that the young woman died with a man in the accident, and the police found forged papers among their belongings." Imran nodded and replied quietly, "I thought she was mercy, but she was a trial." He lifted his head to the sky and added, "By God, Mustafa, if time returned, I would help her again, but never allow her to steal my name." Before Mustafa left, Imran handed him a small key and said, "This is all I have left. If I die and no one finds me, open the box and distribute what is inside to the orphans." A few days later, Haj Imran departed in silence. No farewell, no grand funeral. They found him asleep on the wooden bench beneath the fig tree, his hand clutching the notebook of memories. The villagers buried him in the old cemetery and prayed the absentee prayer for him. But from that day on, no one dared approach the cabin. They said that on certain nights, a faint voice could be heard whispering from within, "O Lord, do not let the kindness of the heart be a cause of ruin." Kind hearts never regret giving, but they ache when repaid with deceit. Do not hand over the keys of your life to those whose past you do not know, for some doors, once opened, never close again.